on this computer. There we go. What's up, everybody? It's Bear with bearindependent.com, and I am joined by this gentleman right here. Sir, please introduce yourself.
Hey, everybody, it's Michael with Asymmetrical Preparedness.
And
how you guys doing today?
You are on the YouTubes and on the Patreons, and yes. You have a really good channel, man. I became aware of you because we were just talking off air before this. You've been subscribed to our channel for a long time, and I think we had some correspondence back in the day. And one of the things that like kept you on my radar is you are 100% doing the things. Not one of those people that's out there just talking a big game, but you're every day, like I'm on YouTube every day, you're posting a video, like the prep of the day video, like every day getting after it. And I appreciate that. So,
thank you.
Oh, of course, man. I like people that, I think the cool kids these days call it hustle, you know, but at least in my age, we called it work ethic. And so I appreciate your work ethic / hustle. And so I guess the first question I have for you and for the viewers, so that you're aware, this is completely unscripted, free form. There's no list of questions. We're just bouncing off of each other. What are you working on right now? Like, what direction are you pointed in right now? You know, with your preparedness, or like, what are you focused on?
Right now, focused on possibly moving to the Ozarks, getting the house, property, everything ready to sell to Kump to come out of my people and get to a more a better place for people like me and people like you. But beyond that, everything we're doing is if we end up being stuck here, everything will just be nicer around here. It's all stuff I need to take care of anyway. I'm really hoping we can get up and get out of here while our housing market is skyrocketing. It's insane here. But other than that, as far as preparedness related, I'm really on the self-sufficiency kick of, you know, we're still buying food storage, still stockpiling water, stuff like that, but really seeds, stockpiling seeds and growing things, adding to our garden all the time. Was working on the chicken coop, but not so sure if we're moving now. So that's kind of on hold right this second. I really know I need to do that also, but I have lots of good people around me. There's hobby farms all around me, bigger farms, you know, stuff like that. Well, big for Washington, not big for you. And they have chickens, you know, they have all kinds of animals around, so I could barter. I already have a network set up, so that's really good. So if I have to stay here, as far as being in Washington State, where I'm at is actually a really good place. So that's a good thing. But yeah, self-reliance and self-sufficiency, I think, like you talk about all the time, being independent from the system, not relying on the on-demand supply system, because we all know how fragile that is, especially with recent events, the pipeline, you know, and what are the trucks? It's going to cost more for fuel, all those kind of things.
You know, this whole pipeline thing, I think, has yet again been another wake up for, I don't know how people make it this far in life with blinders on, but it seems like it's another opportunity for preparedness evangelism. How do you not have even like a gas can or two set back? You know, how are you not paying attention at least to current events a little bit? You know, and that's something that I actually struggle with, as far as, because of the nature of my job, the nature of my jobs in the past, I have to be aware, but I can oftentimes get obsessive over certain things. And then, so I try and keep myself on a low information diet, not be receiving input all day, every day, because then it can, for me, become paralysis by analysis. And so I'd be curious to know, like, how much information do you input every day, and what sources do you trust to get that information from?
That's a good question. I used to do it a lot more. Kind of recently, yeah, like you said, information paralysis. I was following, stuff politically, stuff, all the things. And I was getting very, very frustrated. I was letting it affect me, emotionally, getting upset, angry, stuff like that. And I guess recently I've been more in the low information category, doing things like you said, working on the garden, building new raised beds, doing the things. Um, and kind of like you've said several times, and I know in the past in your videos, that you want to be in a situation when SHTF happens, that a week into it, somebody walks up to your homestead and says, "Oh, hey, SHTF happened," and you're like, "Oh, really?" You're just doing the thing. So that's kind of what I am. So I'm actually pretty low information right now, but the sources I do have are you and your daily reports, because I know that you do the research. I know that you're not going to say anything that you haven't. You'll say this is intelligence versus this is just information that may or may not be true. I really like that. I know, yeah, as far as information, I do listen to conservative talk radio. We have a good channel in the area. But other than that, I'm pretty low information right now. I know my wife has a lot more time because she has lupus. So a lot of times she's not feeling well. So she just basically just kind of chill on the couch. So she'll watch a lot more YouTube. And sometimes she'll get on some of those, the fear porn channels. And I got a reminder of, slow down, honey, but a lot of it, so like, she has a couple of good sources, and, she'll relay stuff. We'll double check, we'll fact check, just like you talk about, verifies, that it's not just BS. But I guess right now I really am low information.
So you brought up your wife. Is she on board with the preparedness aspect of your existence? And
Oh, sorry.
no, it's okay. And like, how long has she been on board? And did you have to do anything to get her on board? And the reason I ask this is I get this question. I've gotten this question as long as I've had a YouTube channel. Bear, how do I get my wife on board? How do I get my husband on board? And I've done probably 4 or 5, maybe 6 videos on it. And for my wife, it was, she one day came to me and she's like, "I don't know why you're stockpiling all these beans and rice." I'm like, "So we don't die." And she's like, "Well, I don't want to eat beans and rice when the world ends." I said, "Great, you're in charge of that. You figure that out." And so I put it on her shoulders to go ahead and start developing a meal plan. If you don't want to eat that, what do you want to eat? I will equip you and empower you to be able to do that. But I also don't want to hear you complain about all the effort that I'm making. So would you speak to that?
Yeah. Okay. So my wife is 100% on board right now. Actually, sometimes I got to tell her to slow down a little bit. But let me see, she's never been opposed to it. As long as we've both been into preparedness. She wasn't as active, or as she wasn't playing as much of an active role for a couple of years or so at first, but then she started getting a little more on board, and then she started realizing, I've talked in some of my videos, she has these things, she calls them warning dreams, but what they are is they're, Heavenly Father speaking. She's a lot more in tune to stuff like that. I don't know why. Somehow she can funnel and recognize those things. So she knows the difference between a dream and these special dreams that really push us in certain directions. And they really do have meaning, because for a long time I was like, "Oh, that's wacko, honey. That's like some, voodoo hippie crap, whatever." And I would just blow it off. But we've been married for almost 18 years now. And I've really learned that when she says this one kind of dream, I listen now. And so those started happening a lot more. And then just events, we started seeing, like we do watch Christian Ice Age Farmer, the crop failure, stuff like that. And then COVID, the whole COVID thing. People ask me that all the time. How can I get a spouse on board with prepping? And I'm like, well, since the COVID thing happened, how can anybody not be on board with prepping? I mean, come on, we saw it. We saw toilet paper gone. We saw food, grocery store shelves empty. We saw it. How can you not? It should be a no-brainer now. But yeah, so she's been speaking recently. She's really had a strong, hardcore prompting to really stack it to the rafters, as you say. Not having a job, I'd be like, okay, slow down a little bit. Let's approach this, methodically. Let's be really smart with our decisions and our money and stuff like that. But yeah, it's a real pull and prompting for her right now, and for me, the self-reliance stuff and the stockpiling food.
Oh, excuse me. We have been feeling that same prompting with food storage, to the point where it's almost nonsensical, because I know people that have more food than I do, but frankly, they're clients and they have a lot of money to deploy against this problem that they're solving through preparedness. My wife is like, if we stack one more bucket, like, where are we going to put all this?
Yeah, that becomes a problem.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Storage for sure is a major prepper challenge, but it's still, it being the conviction to continue to stack food and grow food still has not left me. If anything, it's grown stronger.
Yeah.
And it's one of those things where I really try and be obedient to that, because again, the father, the fact that he would even take a moment to tarry with me to give me a little bit of input, it's like, well, I've got to honor that. And so if he puts these convictions on my heart, I feel like I've got to do it. And so it's almost, sometimes I feel almost a sense of dread at the depth of conviction he's given me. Like, what do you have us preparing for?
Yeah.
Like, what is going on here?
Yeah.
And so then I have to remember that he's in charge, he's in control, and we all serve at his pleasure, and his will is going to be done no matter what. And so the best thing for me is to just get in line with his will. But yeah, with that conviction with food storage has not left me at all. In the 3+ years that I've had a YouTube and Patreon channel now, it's never once been like, hey, you can go ahead and take your foot off the accelerator on that.
Yeah.
So
yeah, I saw the 6,000 pounds of corn. Holy cow, man, that's insane. Because around here, I mean, you guys, being the Midwest, South area kind of, yeah, I guess, corn is a lot more plentiful there. Here, even going to the food store, even go to the feed store, it's really not any more any less expensive than like buying rice at Costco or restaurant supply store. So it's not really that much of an option around here. That I wish I had more. I don't have much corn. We do, yeah, beans, rice. We do canned meats. We got a lot of lentils, quinoa. We try to mix it up, get a lot of different, variety and stuff like that. But that was amazing. I saw that and I was like, whoa, honey, look at this.
So that, again, we were talking off camera about kind of how my brain works as like the business aspect of things. I'm always looking for economy of scale, because typically speaking, the more you buy of something, the less it costs per unit, right?
Yep.
I'm like, so what's the maximum that we could buy, right? And for example, like we just did 12,500 pounds of beans, and that was split amongst different mags, mutual assistance groups. Yep. But it's like, well, how much will my trailer hold? It's like, well, it's a big gooseneck trailer. It's rated for 17,500 pounds. Well, how much do I really want to haul? Well, we'll put 5 pallets at 2,500 pounds a pallet on it. That's 12.5 right there. And then, so now it's like, all right, if I know I have 12.5 in capacity, then I start reaching out to all the people in my network saying, hey, I'm that crazy guy that's going to go buy 6 tons of beans. How many you want? And so then they put in an order essentially in a 50-pound sack. How many 50-pound sacks do you want? And then we arrange a meetup and everybody shows up and we offload. Bob got 4 sacks of pintos and 4 sacks of black beans, and Susie got 2 bags of lentils, and just line everybody up and do it that way. And then that brings the overall cost per pound way down because we're buying in pallet volume, not going to Costco or Sam's Club. And that's just how my brain works. You know, at one point we looked into getting rice by the semi load, and yeah, I would have done it,
Yeah.
but I didn't have a place to put a semi load of rice. So, but it does lead me to another question I have for you. Have you found in your neck of the woods where you're at, are there mags, are there mutual assistance groups? Are there other like-minded people, or is it kind of dry? Are you guys loners up there?
There are definitely mutual assistance groups. I have really good one, people I can rely on and stuff like that. We may not be as active as a mag in some regards. Some people have really active ones. They have weekly training, stuff like that. We're kind of hit or miss. The whole COVID thing and our location, we didn't have stuff like that, but we definitely have a network. There are a lot of like-minded people around here. It's kind of the situation where almost all states are basically the same. If you get out into the rural areas, the people are basically the same no matter what state you go to. They're just good people. They want to do their own thing. They want to, you know, garden, raise animals, stuff like that. You know, there's people around that, you know, don't get it and stuff like that, but there definitely are. I know that there, Eastern Washington, there's a lot more because of just the nature of who lives there and everything, and the agricultural nature of the state. But I know that there's probably 2 or 3 that I know of. I have contact with them. I know how to get a hold of them. You know, we got that relationship built where we can call each other basically, you know, if something happens or whatever. But so maybe it's a little looser knit. I'm not really sure how things are there. I know that you guys have got like awesome setup, and you know, you got your rings and everything like that, and you got, you know, Pastor Joe, Viking Preparedness, that whole group, you know, a little ways away from you and stuff like that. And so you guys have, and it seems like every time I turn on YouTube, there's another, it's always, somebody's always in the Ozarks. I mean, NWA Prepper, you got Prepping in Progress, you got Revolting Man, you got Millennial Man, you got, and I forget how active those people are anymore because I haven't had the chance to watch as much because I've been so busy. But yeah, it's not necessarily as good as what you guys have there, but there are definitely a lot of like-minded people. Like where I live, on a weekend, some weekdays even, every direction you hear gunshots going on. I mean, people out shooting, target practicing, which I don't know where they're getting the ammo from, but yeah, that's another thing. The Freedom Seeds. I haven't bought Freedom Seeds in probably 2 years now, but that's because I made sure I was good to go. So I don't have to buy any, you know.
So if I had a time machine, about 2 years ago, Palmetto State Armory had, you could buy 1,000 rounds of Federal 55 grain 5.56, and they'd give you 10 free PMags with it for $200,
Yeah,
$199. I would have filled a football stadium with that if I had a time machine, dude. We'd be having this conversation on the back of my yacht right now. But you know, and that's something that we've still been able to find ammo at relatively reasonable prices here. And so, you know, we have ammo, we have an inventory, and we shoot regularly, which is, it's good to train. It's good for unit cohesion. It's also good for everybody around you to know, like you mentioned, when they hear you shooting, and not a trivial amount of ammo every week during a global pandemic, when nobody can get ammo, and they're like, those guys shoot hundreds of rounds every week. Like, yeah, that's us. Best friends, worst enemies, your choice, you know. and we're also surrounded by really good people, so we don't have any of those issues, but we definitely have realized we have a reputation in the greater community, and I like that. We've had several people tell us that they feel that they live in the safest place on planet Earth. I'm like, that's awesome. That's awesome. So, but can you find ammo out there? Because we can find it. And there's one store that hasn't adjusted their prices during COVID. So they'll have the $14 box of 9mm when it's in stock, which is great. You know, 50 round box of ammo, $13.99. Cool. So we go and buy that up when we can. And, but, you know, it's not really an availability thing on our end. It's pricing. When do I choose to engage? And I'm not spending 70 cents to $1 around a 9mm ball, you know?
Yeah, so around here, yeah, I mean, it does, I mean, they're still making ammo, they're still shipping ammo, stuff like that. So like we have Sportsman's Warehouse, we have Bass Pro, we have a Cabela's, we have, you know, Walmart still gets some in, stuff like that. What it is it's like you said, timing for pricing. For us, it's timing for availability. So if you're there right when they open on the day that they get their shipment, yeah, you can buy ammo, and they limit it to how many, you know, boxes you can buy or whatever the amount. I don't even know. I haven't even tried because I don't know about their prices. I think that a lot of them haven't really upped pricing too much. Not crazy, but it's just people trying to take advantage of the system. Kind of like preppers, we buy a lot of stuff, we stockpile stuff, but I don't think they're doing it for that. They're doing it to make a profit, which, you know, I mean, hey, capitalism works great, good for them, you know, but they're buying it, reselling it at gun stores, or gun shows, or online, stuff like that. And, you know, I'm all for capitalism, but I'm also not for, you know, raping your fellow man for no reason. So yeah, we can find it. It's just, I'm pretty good. Would I buy more if I found some for a decent price? Yeah, of course. I'd always, you know, you can never have too much, but it's one of those things that side of things, security, defensive, stuff like that, I feel I'm pretty good. I've done, you know, I'm good there. So that's why it's the emphasis food now, because like I know you've mentioned and I've mentioned, any prepper that is any worth their salt at all mentions the fact that whereas you may have to do this in SHTF, you will have to eat. So yeah.
For sure. You know, we've gotten to the point now where, just as an SOP, a standard operating practice within our sphere of influence here, security is commoditized. And it doesn't mean that it isn't valuable. It's incredibly valuable. You have to have it, but it's commoditized. Everybody is involved with it. And so that actually changes the relationship with people who want to be here or aspire to be here, because we get a lot of people that would contact us and they're like, well, you know, I was Naval Special Marine Corps CAG spaceship door gunner on a submarine one time, and like, man, that's awesome. Bless you, bro. Cool. Do you know how to plant potatoes? Because everybody here can work a handgun, a shotgun, and a rifle. Everybody. It's just part of how we roll. And some people are better than others at it. But everybody has at least, and I'm talking like from teenagers up, has at least basic passable proficiency with pick a platform, right? So we as an organization are students of weapons craft here, and we also take security very seriously. So it's kind of changed the value proposition for folks that contact us. They go, oh, I'm a super operator badass guy. I'm like, dude, that's awesome. Good for you. You need to get out there and weed the garden, because I'm so glad that you can do the security things, and that's really important. But yeah, we're gonna have to eat. 100% chance we're gonna eat today. Hopefully 0% chance we're gonna have to pull a trigger in anger today. And so it doesn't mean, like you said, it doesn't mean that you neglect the security aspect of it, but it does mean, at least for us, because it's such an important part of our SOPs, it therefore becomes commoditized. It's institutionalized in who we are. And so
Yep.
for other people from the outside looking in, your security background is no longer the thing that gains you consideration. And I think that's, I don't know if that's just us, but I've talked to a lot of people throughout the country. As part of my job is talking to people throughout the country. And there seems to be the beginning of a pretty subtle shift from kind of the militant survivalist aspect of it. You know, we're all gonna run into the woods with our OD green, you know, Vietnam issue load bearing gear and our Sopaco MREs, right? And I had a guy say to me one time, he said, survivalism seems to be guys with ARs and MREs using their ARs to get more MREs from other guys with ARs and MREs. I was like, that's a pretty good way of looking at it. But there seems to be, at least by my perception, a shift from that mentality to, hey, you know what's cool? Not starving to death. You know, doing the agricultural things, what we call the militant farmer concept. You got to be able to feed yourself. You got to be able to protect yourself. And those two columns kind of inform everything else that we do. Would you say where you are, have you noticed anything like that? Like, what's the balance like where you're at?
Yeah, there's definitely preppers and prepper groups. What I see a lot of, and I'm sure you do too, is what I call the Amazon preppers. And they just, you know, they don't necessarily go out and do the things. So they don't necessarily know how to use anything, but they have all the stuff, which you know, hey, at least they're doing something. But, and then I also do see, yes, the other side of things. We have a lot of, like you mentioned, mags and prepper stuff. We have tons of very active groups that are aligned to the other side of things, not having anything to do with preparedness, but having to do with that that dirty M word that you know, the media doesn't like, and they try to make it sound bad. That is a very strong presence here in this state. A lot of people involved with that. I actually learned about all that stuff because I had a negative connotation of that word also for a long time, and I don't know why I did. I guess mainstream media, you know, before I was awakened. And actually, what that whole idea, what I learned about that was during I was taking a Homeland Security class and for college, and I was researching domestic terror, or well, I forget if it was domestic terrorism or what it was, but one of the topics you could get into was the M word. And so I started in research, contacting, emailing, stuff like that, going out to some of the training with the guys. And I look around, I'm like, wait a sec, these guys aren't bad guys. I'm like, these guys are exactly like me, you know? Yeah, it's they were all constitutionally minded people, law-abiding people, good people. And I know there are bad people out there, there's bad groups and stuff like that. But for the most part, everything around here, and that totally changed my perspective. And I wrote an awesome paper on it. My instructor loved it. And luckily I was going through a university that was the general education classes. You had a really mix of there, but almost everybody else was very conservative, very military, you know, type people. So they all really loved the paper, and it helped some people open their eyes also to that side of things. So yeah, we got a lot of groups like that. There are active, real prepper mags that get out and do the things. I'd say there's probably some of the like we used to be called survivalists, like you said. To me, survivalist is kind of like somebody that they're more like, maybe a little more on the militant side, but a little bit more kind of just bushcrafters, you know, going out into the woods, you know, disappearing and stuff like that, which I like to strike a balance between all of it.
I think where you are at, and I could be wrong, feel free to correct me. I think where you are at, you would probably be better, a person would be better off if they had to reenact SEER school, would probably be better off doing it where you are than where I'm at, because there seems to be an abundance of water. probably, wild edibles, wildlife, the ability to make shelter. Where I'm at, yeah, we have trees, we have forests, and we have all that, but there's not a ton of game. It's out there, but it's called hunting, not shooting. It's called fishing, not catching. It's called trapping, not, there's definitely going to be something in this thing. And so in my experience, and even growing up in upstate New York, where there was an abundance of wildlife, many times I went hunting and you're not guaranteed to shoot anything. You're not guaranteed to catch anything when you go fishing. Sometimes it's an absolute blessing of a bounty. Other times it's zero. You got nothing. And so, I'm just curious about where you are in your particular area of the world. Is it like more viable or less viable to be a bushcrafter there? Because my basic premise is they're good skills to have, but I'm not trying to live in the woods indefinitely.
Yeah.
What's your take on that?
Yeah, very true. And I like having the skills and the knowledge, but I also don't plan on, I think that's putting yourself up, setting yourself up for failure, trying to do something like that long term. I talked about that in videos. Very few people have those skill sets required to survive long term in a situation like that. But yes, this area would be very, very good for that because water is plenty, lakes, rivers, rain is, the Olympic National Forest is a lot of it's a rainforest. So, there's that aspect also, that around here, you could literally run through the woods buck naked, and other than scratching yourself on a blackberry bush, there's nothing out there. There is stinging nettle, which, that's no big deal really. There's no poison oak, there's no poison ivy, there's no poison snakes.
Have you tested this theory?
Well, no.
Okay, I'm just curious. It's fun.
There are cougars out here. There are black bears, but black bears are not very aggressive and they pretty much just run away, keep away. There's coyotes, there's fox, but there's nothing. There's no real threats out here in the woods. That's one of the appeals. This state is beautiful. If it was a little bit different situation, politically and other things, I would love to stay here. The growing season's great. The soil's great. There's not that many, like I said, threats out in the woods. Hunting is abundant. There's tons of deer here. My primary bug out location, we have a cabin. Basically, we bought the whole top of a mountain. We got about 40 acres up there and a cabin and, outbuildings and stuff like that is our primary location. That is extremely, extremely remote, off grid. And you're going through areas where if there's that golden horde, trust me, they're not going to make it to my cabin because all the people down in the lower lands, the valleys, all the ranchers, the farmers and stuff like that, they'll take care of the business before it even gets to me there. But up there, there's tons of mule deer, whitetail. There's one, I came up one morning, I stepped out on the front porch of my cabin, look, just, corner of the eye glance. I'm like, oh, there's an elk right there. It was like 50 feet away. So I go running inside, grab the 45-70. My wife's like, don't shoot the deer. I'm like, honey, you know me too well. And I go running out there, and on second glance, it was actually a mule deer that was about the size of a small elk. It was massive. And there's elk up there, and there's moose up there, and there's also grizzlies up there, though, and mountain lions. But one thing that's nice is it's such a high elevation that for some reason, I guess maybe because it's easier for them to live at a lower elevation, there's rattlesnakes down at lower elevations, but there's no rattlesnakes up there either. Which I know rattlesnakes live at that elevation, like Colorado and stuff like that, but that's only in places where it's everywhere is that elevation. Here, I guess it's because, like I said, they have choices to go at lower elevations, so there's no snakes up there either, which is really nice. But yeah, it would be a lot more viable here. You've seen my videos, I'm sure you see, I have blackberries overtaking everything. I have a neighbor down the street that actually has you're the equipment man, so you know what he's talking about. He has one of those mini tractors, I forget what they're called, Bobcat. Yeah, he's a Bobcat, and he has a flail or something like that, a flail attachment.
Yep.
He's gonna help me come through here in my lower field and my upper field and just flail the crap out of all the blackberries and take them out, because that I could have an orchard down there. I could have a lot more garden down there, but it's overtaken by blackberries. So we got blackberries, we got blueberries grow wild in some areas around here, huckleberries, red and black huckleberries, salmon berries, tons of different berries, tons of different roots and wild edibles around here. So yeah, it's a lot more viable, although I still don't think it's the best option.
So you made a comment that reminded me of something that I've personally gone through. You said, if things were different here politically, it'd be, essentially paraphrasing, it'd be worth staying, but it's not. And you mentioned earlier that you're looking to leave where you're at, potentially to come into the Ozarks or, any other place that the Father moves you. Because you've been following our channel for a long time. When I started the channel, I was in North Texas, and we moved to where we are now, Eastern Oklahoma, from, a third of an acre in downtown suburbia. I was a few blocks from the town square in this town. What used to be a little town now is a massive town, to out here population density 0, us. And I caught a lot of flack from people, Texans, basically saying, "You wussy, you should have stayed and made it better. Who are you to just run away? How do you think you're going to fix things if you just run away?" And well, that of course annoyed me, because there's a lot of armchair warriors on the internet. And B, my family has been in Texas, and my family still is in Texas. Been there for 200 years. We've got a county named after us in Texas. So I think I get to speak with a little bit of authority on Texas. And it was no longer tenable for us to stay there. The cost of living was exorbitant. We just couldn't do it anymore. It was stupid. And then the quality of life, I wouldn't even say that the quality of life changed. My perception of quality of life changed from, I don't want perfectly paved roads and a nice house and a nice car and great schools, and our kids have so much wonderful stuff. I don't care about stuff. And my kids were basing their self-worth on their stuff, not their inherent value, not the fact that they're fearfully and wonderfully made, not their giftings and talents and delights. They're on their stuff. And so as my perception of quality of life shifted, North Texas went from a blessing to be there to we had to get out. And I guess the question that I have for you is, in light of where you find yourself currently, looking at leaving the state that you're in, what would you say to somebody who would say you should stay and fix it?
Yeah, I get that. I get that on, I talk about moving. Well, I mean, I'm not the kind of person that quits, just gives up. I get it. We got to fight the fight, but it's not just also about that. It's about, like you said, honoring the Father and following our promptings. I've been prompted to move to the Ozarks for a long time. I mean, probably at least 5, 6, 7 years ish. And it's just, life circumstances happen, this, that, wife's medical, kids, all this stuff like that happens. And so it's something I want to do anyway. But then this state's getting really, really bad, exponentially fast. I mean, just the other day, I don't even know exactly when, because like I said, I'm low information right now, but I heard that our exalted governor, probably either the worst or second worst in the nation, Jay Inslee, decided all by himself that critical race theory would be a mandatory part of public school, which we don't public school, we homeschool. But my 13-year-old son does online. It's still a public school, but it's online. We really want to shift him to a full-on actual, no, honest to goodness homeschool curriculum, completely, independent of the system. But right now that's where he's at. And I said, no, I'm not going to have my child subject to a school system and a course that's teaching him that no matter what, he's wrong and he's bad only because God made him the way he is. Nobody is wrong or bad, no matter what color their skin is, no matter what anything, because God all made us in his image, and all he made us different, and he loves us all. And that's one thing that we're not going to put up with. And then all the mask mandates, and maybe they're making vaccine mandates here also, where you can't go to sporting events, you can't go to a Sounders soccer, professional soccer game without a vaccine. And they're also talking about segregation of vaccinated, not vaccinated. We're going back to Jim Crow laws here, but it's vaccinated versus unvaccinated. And for my oldest daughter and her family, that is one of the biggest things. She is completely 100% anti-vax. To me, I don't choose to get vaccinated, but I also am a firm believer of free will. And so, if somebody wants to, whatever, that's up to you. It's just someone I choose not to. And I don't want to live in a place where I can't work, I can't get food, I can't do this, I can't do anything without my vaccination paperwork, aka Nazi Germany.
Yeah, the vaccine thing is something that, if anybody's paid any attention to my channel over the last year, 18 months, I'm not taking it. If you want to take it, go for it. But I cannot, under any circumstances, come up with a reason why, thank you, brother, a reason why you or anybody else get to mandate that I have to. And that's one of the things that's in our uniquely American form of governance. We have individual liberties and individual responsibilities, and our government derives its just powers from the consent of the governed. The just powers, consent of the governed. Those are two very key phrases there. And I don't consent, and those aren't just powers. But it's never been lost on me, and I think in part because I've seen some of the inner workings of the federal government. The government is just people, and we're just people. And at some point, this is just people enacting their will on other people. And that's wrong, at least from where I stand. I should be able to do whatever I want to do as long as I'm not actually harming you. Not like my words made you feel bad or something, right? Or, my lack of a mask threatens you. And you should be able to do whatever you want to do as long as you're not actually harming me or anybody else. If there's no loss of property, no loss of liberty, no loss of life, we can vehemently disagree. That's fine. You go your way, I'm going to go my way. And so the idea that it would be mandated by anybody that I have to, the substance could be maple syrup, that I have to shoot maple syrup in my arm. Not happening, man. I'm just not doing it. And so for those that want to, that's fine. Go for it. That's absolutely 100% your right. And you should exercise that right if you feel like you need to. But for those of us that don't, like you said, we're going backwards in our history here. Jim Crow laws, segregation, we're creating the other right now, socioeconomically, politically in this country. And that's a dangerous thing. It actually ties perfectly into a question that I had for you earlier, is where do you see the United States of America on the macro as a country headed in the next few years? What's your short-term analysis of the direction of the country?
That's a good one. Oh, man. Let me see. I really think, and my wife, I know, definitely thinks that what's going on right now is going to gain steam exponentially. She feels that this one pipeline thing that whole thing isn't over, that's going to, get a lot bigger. There's going to be a lot more effect from that, as well as, the out of control governance, basically, like you said, people exerting their will over others, and getting really bad. And kind of one of those things you've said in the past, I hate to say it because it's one of those very challenging things that I don't know if this can be solved peacefully. I mean, God, man, I pray, I pray, you know, that it can be. Oh man, but it's just one of those things that it's we're headed in a really bad direction. And it's not just Biden, it's not just Trump, it's not just anybody. You know that, you know, it's all of them, and it's, you know, it's everything else and all this stuff going on. It's just misgovernance, misuse of power, of control, and all this stuff. And we've slid from being a constitutional republic long, you know, it's just, I don't know if it's recoverable. I know a lot of people have talked about balkanization, and man, that's a tough subject too, because I mean, I've defended my country. I mean, I fought for my country for 20 years, you know, in the military and stuff, and, you know, red, white, and blue, you know, in United States and everything like that. And the dissolvement or the dissolution of the United States would really suck. But maybe in the long run, we'd be better off. You know, I don't know, but I definitely, I feel that we're headed in a very bad direction very quickly. And I don't necessarily think it's going to get any worse. That's another reason why we want to get out of here, get out of Dodge as quick as possible, and get there where like-minded people, better policies, less people exuding their will over others, lower population density. But the main thing is that we, my wife, my family and I know that we have to respond to and answer his promptings. That if we're not living our lives in accordance with his will, that we just won't be as good for sure.
Amen to that. You know, the balkanization thing, and the idea of conflict is definitely something that I don't find comforting.
No.
You know, in the United States of America, it's not, I'm not excited for conflict at all. And I tend to be very wary of people that are, because I have run into those militant types of like, what we need to do is, you know, get our rifles and stand up against the government. I'm like, I honestly think probably the time for that is past at this point. Because the government has done such a good job of disregarding the Constitution at this point. You know, we were a constitutional republic. I don't think that we are anymore because, you know, deeds not words. How do we behave? Generally speaking, we disregard the Constitution or think very lightly of it at a federal level in a lot of ways. And I think that there will be a higher intensity to the conflict in the years ahead in the United States of America. I think we're in low intensity conflict right now. You know, you see, you know, the Antifas and the BLMs and people and the pro-Trump people showing up and smashing heads with one another out in the streets. And I mean, gosh, Portland, how long is Portland? A year Portland's been going on. And so, crazy. Yeah, all of this is low intensity conflict. And I think that's going to ramp up over time. And as it does, that's going to delegitimize the central authority in the United States federal government for the average American who's watching this going, why don't you do something? And then I think their ability to do something is going to be diminished as the dollar weakens, as the economy grinds to a halt. I think those things are likely to happen. And then that further removes legitimacy from the federal government. And then states and regions then start doing the cost benefit analysis of, why am I submitted to a central federal authority? You're not doing anything for me anymore. Right now, the value proposition is different. There's a lot of states, you know, again, I was knocking Texas earlier, but Texas accounts for 27% of the national GDP. Over a quarter of national GDP comes out of Texas. At what point does Texas go, there's really no point in us being part of the United States. We give you more than we get back and you make our lives miserable, right? And so I think as we continue to circle the drain, I think that value proposition becomes more and more blatant, where it's states go, there's no point for us to be part of this federation of states. And then they start to pull back, and that's where you get that balkanization from. But, you know, even like you look at like so many regions, as you said earlier, the populated areas tend to be more liberal, more democratic. The rural areas tend to be more conservative, more Republican. You know, like the northern half of California has been wanting to be called Jefferson, for break off and form the state of Jefferson for, you know, decades. You know, so I think there's the real possibility, I'd say within the next 5 to 7 years, that something like that starts to happen.
Yeah, the state of Jefferson, that actually was picking up a lot of steam, and might have actually happened if World War II hadn't happened. That's what, because then everybody was like, oh gosh, we got to get on board. This is more important and stuff like that. But yeah, state of Jefferson, state of Liberty here, state of greater Idaho, that whole movement. There's a lot of movements going on with that. And what I think is the kind of maybe a little bit of a case for balkanization is that, look at the land mass. Look how big our country is. Look at like Europe. I'm not saying Europe is a good example of governance, but I'm saying that there are so many smaller countries that one government overarching over an area this big, with people of so many different cultures, that it's almost I don't know. I guess just because it would be more out of touch. Or if you returned it more localized, like if the United States was 4, 6, 8 different countries, well, then you could actually be more proactive, and you could actually, you know, I guess, govern like the people in that specific area want to be governed, instead of just everywhere.
Yeah, instead of taxation without representation. You know, as you were saying that, it almost made me think, when you brought up Europe, I was kind of thinking in that same direction, almost like the UN. And I'm no fan of the United Nations, but almost like where each individual state has their, or nation state has their sovereignty. They act in their own best interest. And then if, you know, if there's a proposition, somebody makes a proposal, the great state of Oklahoma proposes that everybody is required to have at least 1 bottle of peanut butter whiskey in their homes at all times. You know, we could all take that under advisement. And if we agree, we agree. And if we don't, like, screw you, Oklahoma, we're not doing that. You know, where there's a lot more autonomy at the state level than what we currently have, which is how the 10th Amendment was supposed to have played out. Anything that's not specifically outlined in the Constitution and the Bill of Rights then becomes the purview of the states to operate as they see fit. But unfortunately, the states got so dependent, you know, they suckled on the teeth of the government so hard, the federal government, that now they're beholden to these big federal systems. So I could go on and on and on about that for an hour. You got any questions for me, brother?
Yeah, you got an extra house for me?
I will look for you. I absolutely will. Now that I know you're serious, I will.
No, I'm kidding. Yeah, let me see, questions for you. Not really any specific questions. Well wishes. I hope you recover quickly so you can get back to doing the things, because I know I'm the same kind of guy. I can't sit still. It sucks. So I really hope you recover quickly and get back to doing the things, because I know that's important to you. So yeah, it's been fun. Really, thank you for taking the time to do this. Also, I know you're super busy, probably a lot more busy than I am. And yeah, I really have a lot of respect and thanks and gratitude for it.
Bro, I appreciate you, man. And I appreciate your well wishes. I am so, like, the surgery is not what's painful. Sitting still for 4 to 6 weeks is what's painful. So I do appreciate that. And thank you for being along for the ride here for what, 3 years plus now. And you've been there behind the scenes at this channel, you know, many times. We've had correspondence back and forth. You've sent me some really cool stuff that I appreciate deeply in the mail. You're a great guy, dude. So how do people find you on the internet?
All right, YouTube, Asymmetrical Preparedness. And if they want to email me, asymmetricalpreparedness@gmail.com. Patreon, Asymmetrical Preparedness. And Instagram, also Asymmetrical Preparedness. I did Twitter for a little bit, and I just realized that that was a big dumpster fire, so I got out of there. And now that Parler's back up, I may get into that. I don't know. I don't really like social media really at all. The only reason why I do the other platforms is to try to drive traffic to YouTube and Patreon, because that's what I really enjoy. I really enjoy talking, making videos, empowering, uplifting, and teaching others. So yeah, those are the places.
Awesome. I'm going to grab all those links and I will put them in the description down here so people can find them. And man, I appreciate you, brother. I'm gonna go ahead and hit stop record now. Bless you, bro.
Awesome. Thank you.